This is a culture of entitlement on steroids. And I don't care how many movies you've made. I don't care how much money you've made. Right is still right and wrong is still wrong. And I hope they go medieval on these people.
It is Thursday, March 14th. At least one school says it is ready to take action in that college bribery scandal as this incredible story continues to develop.
That's right. But after millions of dollars in bribes and bond money, was all this really worth the price of admission? Plus, a major impact on air travel this morning after President Trump grounds all Boeing 737 MAX 8 planes.
Yeah, the urgent warning and safety concerns for travelers that led to this alarming about-face. And the question America is waking up asking themselves this morning, at least some people, what is Beto O'Rourke's dog thinking?
We always wonder what our dogs are thinking, but we've got your theories about what's troubling Beto's best friend. Fox and Friends First continues right now.
Act in this case, and it just seems to me that the FAA and Boeing sat around the table and failed to act in the best interest of the American people because they took action only after a public outcry.
And Boeing saying today they are going to support the president's and the FAA's move. So now back to the passengers. There are some options for you out there. Most airlines will let you rebook or request a refund. You can also try to rebook on a different airline. You just have to make that phone call. By the way, United said it's actually been preparing a contingency plan since Sunday's plane crash. They've been trying to prepare its fleet to minimize impact to its customers. Ralph, Jillian? Better safe than sorry.
Yeah.
Aisha, thank you.
All right, Fox News alert and breaking overnight, a New York City mob boss is gunned down outside of his home. Gambino family leader Frankie Cali shot several times in Staten Island. The gunman sped away in a blue pickup truck and is now on the run. It's unclear if this was actually a mafia hit job or just a rogue gunman. Cali is the highest-ranking mobster killed in New York City since 1985 when John Gotti ordered the murder of Gambino boss Paul Castellano. What a story.
Cameras will be allowed inside the Chicago courtroom later this morning when Empire actor Jussie Smollett appears. He's expected to plead not guilty to 16 felony counts. Smollett accused of staging a phony hate crime on himself. Empire's first episode since his arrest aired last night. Smollett's character was front and center. He's been written out of the final 2 episodes of the show.
All right, the president threatening to veto the resolution to end his national emergency declaration.
We'll see whether or not I have to do the veto, and it will be, I think, all very successful regardless of how it all works out, but it's going to be very successful.
Today's the day. Just hours from now, the Senate will begin debating this issue. 5 Republicans have said that they'll side with Democrats, but we'll see if that's changing. We're going to get the very latest in a live report from Griff Jenkins in Washington in about 30 minutes from now.
Well, now it's that story that everyone is still talking about. The University of Southern California will review applications of students involved in the largest college admission scandal in U.S. history.
Actress Lori Loughlin, Aunt Becky, charged for bribing that school, is now out on bond. That's her daughter. Todd Pyro joins us live with the latest developments in all this. Hey, Todd.
Hey, guys. A huge response from USC, one of the big-time schools targeted. A spokesperson writing, "We are going to conduct a case-by-case review for current students and graduates that may be connected to the scheme alleged by the government. We will make informed, appropriate decisions once those reviews have been completed. Some of these individuals may have been minors at the time of their application process. Applicants in the current admission cycle who are connected to the scheme alleged by the government will be denied admission to USC. All this as actress Lori Loughlin is released on a $1 million bond following her appearance in federal court in L.A. The Full House star, along with her husband, accused of paying $500,000 in bribes to get their daughters into USC, passing them off as rowers, even though it appears they've never picked up an oar. Senator John Kennedy says the scandal is endemic of a bigger problem of the middle class getting hurt.
This is some of the most odious, vile, repugnant, reprehensible conduct I've ever seen. We look around and we see too many undeserving people at the top cutting corners and getting bailouts, and too many undeserving people at the bottom getting handouts, and we're playing by the rules, and we get screwed every time.
Laughlin and her husband, along with another actress accused, Felicity Huffman, scheduled to face a Boston judge on March 29th. We'll see if prosecutors call the children involved as witnesses and what impact that has on any deals those parents might make. It's one thing when you're charged. It's another thing when your kids are charged, as we saw with the Michael Flynn situation. People act differently when their kids are involved.
Absolutely.
And there's no better opinion on Capitol Hill than John Kennedy for any story. Todd, thank you so much.
Yeah.
He does, yeah.
Paul Manafort slapped with new charges after being sentenced to 7.5 years behind bars. The former Trump campaign manager just indicted for mortgage fraud, conspiracy, and falsifying records in New York. The announcement coming less than an hour after a federal judge sentenced him to 43 months in prison for illegally lobbying in Ukraine. Last week, Manafort was sentenced to 47 months for fraud.
Commerce Secretary Wilbur Ross is going to be grilled on Capitol Hill Day. The House Oversight Committee demanding to know why the Trump administration is pushing to ask, are you a citizen in the 2020 census? The hearing comes just days after a second federal judge has ruled that the question violates the Constitution. The Supreme Court plans to take up that case next month.
The Senate is expected to vote on the Green New Deal this month. Republican senators say they expect Majority Leader Mitch McConnell to bring the resolution up for a vote on March 25th. That's when the Senate returns from recess. The proposal, spearheaded by Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, strives for net zero greenhouse gas emissions. The vote will not pass.
It's going to be interesting, nevertheless. All right, a powerful bomb cyclone, Bombogenesis, packed with heavy snow bearing down on the central U.S. right now. That storm turning deadly in Colorado, where Corporal Daniel Groves was hit and killed trying to help a driver in blizzard conditions.
Terrible.
Yeah.
And take a look at this.
Wow.
Winds in Texas so powerful, a semi-truck flipped on the highway just right on its side. The weather canceling nearly 600 flights in and out of Denver today.
Janice Dean is tracking the storm. She joins us now. Such wind with these things.
The great blizzard of 2019.
Yeah.
This was historic. 103 mile per hour peak wind gusts. And it did bomb out. That Bombogenesis, it dropped 33 millibars in less than 24 hours. Incredible. This will be in some of the weather books. Taking a look at it, you see when it got really wound up yesterday. It is now lifting across the northern plains and parts of the upper Midwest, the Great Lakes. So it's starting to weaken a little bit. But man, this was quite a storm. Still wind gusts in excess of 60 miles per hour across the Great Plains. And we are still dealing with blizzard conditions as well. So blizzard warnings in effect for parts of the Rockies up towards the Midwest. Then the flooding concern, and we had tornadoes yesterday. So an incredible storm system. The severe threat is going to move across parts of the Mississippi River Valley, the Ohio Valley. This will mainly be a wind threat, but we are going to see, the slight threat for tornadoes, but incredible throughout the afternoon and this evening. We're still going to be dealing with this storm system. Eventually, it lifts up towards the Great Lakes and into Canada. But again, in terms of meteorology, this thing was incredible. It was like a hurricane.
It's a hurricane.
It's like
snow.
Different dynamics, obviously, but a hurricane across the plain states.
It's just
unbelievable. Incredible. Yeah.
Hopefully everyone remains safe out there.
Absolutely. Yes.
Thanks.
You got it.
It is just about 11 minutes after the hour. An illegal immigrant with 9 ICE detainer requests now charged with murder. The police chief slamming California's sanctuary policies. Attorney Emily Campagno says he has every right to, and she joins us live with how this murder should have been prevented.
And is air pollution racist? The new study that has social media blowing smoke this morning. Stay tuned.
The city of San Jose and our police department has no control over how the county interacts with federal immigration enforcement and deportation of violent or serious felons. Those policies are not set at our level. This isn't about politics. This is about public safety.
The San Jose police chief slamming California's sanctuary policies after an illegal immigrant and admitted gang member with 9 previous ICE detainers is charged with a brutal murder.
Yeah, should stories like this be a game changer for sanctuary policy? This is the question this morning. Here now to weigh in is attorney and Fox News contributor Emily Campagno. Thanks for coming on, Emily. It's hard to reason around this. The guy had so many arrests and convictions. how do you argue against sending him out of the country when he's illegal?
I think it's impossible to be able to do that. And actually, the police chief said it best to me when he said, look, we have zero control. Both the city of San Jose and my police force has zero control what the county does in terms of its interaction with federal law enforcement and deporting these violent felons. I want to point out for viewers the fact that if he had been a legal citizen under California's current 3 strikes law, he literally would be in prison for the rest of his life. And yet, because of his illegal status, he was afforded basically the right at this point for the county, the city, to ignore the 9 detainer requests by ICE. And to me, the travesty is obvious with, unfortunately, that murdered woman.
That's unreal, yeah.
Emily, I'm reading an article right now about this, and it talks about, everything that the county could have done, but also saying that the county says that federal officials are to blame for this because ICE should have gotten a warrant here. What do you say to that?
What I say is that's 2 steps down in the procedure. So if they had responded to the retainer requests by ICE the 9 times, it wouldn't have had to get to the warrant stage. So to me, that's a little bit of pushing off of responsibility. I also point to the fact, too, that he had been deported in 2013, had been arrested and convicted multiple times, again, of violent felonies through these years. So it's not as if we're talking about a one-time slip through the cracks in the last month, and here's what could have changed that outcome. Also note for viewers that, I call them the 4 horsemen of federal prosecutions, but it's basically what makes up 80% plus of federal prosecutions, and it's immigration among them. The other 3 are fraud and drugs and firearms. So my point is that the DOJ and the U.S. takes it so seriously that it comprises among the majority of prosecutions, and yet counties are ignoring that to the detriment of their lawful citizens who are, as we see here, literally getting murdered.
Yeah, the police say that this guy was stalking this 59-year-old woman, eventually killed her. Let's take a look at what this young man was convicted of in the past. We've got burglary, battery of a police officer, trespassing, possession of meth, kidnapping. A lot of these are very serious crimes. And I know a lot of Californians, a lot of liberals will say, oh, well, if you're arrested for small things, you shouldn't be sent out of the country. But what we learned this week, or what we were reminded of, is that Californians are still pretty stiff on the death penalty. We learned that through the Gavin Newsom situation. And you wonder, if you show them a case like this where somebody has convictions for violent crimes, I have to think most people in California would say, get him out of here. What do you think?
You would think the rational ones would, yes. And also, it's important that in terms of the differentiating factor in a lot of California's laws, and also in the conversation, is really that violent propensity, right? It's the violent charges, the violent convictions. So I agree with you that here, that's why in part it's so egregious. Not only were there violent convictions, but there were multiple, again, over the last 5 years. So absolutely, you would think here there's literally no argument whatsoever. This is not protecting a family who has come across the border seeking a better life with an innocuous history.
Somebody with a traffic ticket or something like that. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, okay. All right.
Emily, thank you for your time.
Thank you both.
All right, 18 minutes after the hour. The fallout for flyers, for travelers, after President Trump grounds those Boeing 737 MAX jets.
America's most popular airlines use the aircraft. So how will this affect travel? The founder of Travel Pulse weighs in next.
Are working very, very hard right now, and hopefully they'll very quickly come up with the answer. But until they do, the planes are grounded. The safety of the American people and all people is our paramount concern.
Okay, so the president officially halting the flight of all Boeing 737 MAX jets in the U.S. after 2 fatal crashes.
But America's most popular airlines use the aircraft, so how will the ban affect travelers? Here to weigh in is the founder of TravelPulse.com, Mark Murphy. Thank you for joining us this morning. We appreciate it. And this is something that concerns everybody. So do you think this was the right call, and what should people know?
Number one, if you don't know what caused the crash, you definitely want to be cautious because you're putting people's lives at risk. So I think it's a prudent thing to do. We saw that happen with the Dreamliner when they had the battery issue. Those planes were grounded for 3 months. And at the end of the day, it did not impact travelers very much because they were able to shift other equipment onto those routes. And so always err on the fact of safety. Interesting enough, we didn't hear much from pilots of the planes. We heard from the Airline Pilots Association, but I thought it was interesting that we didn't really hear from the pilots complaining about, boy, I don't want to fly this plane. So it's kind of interesting how it's evolved over the last few days.
Let's look at a couple of graphics here to show the countries that have suspended this. A lot of countries at this point. The U.S. was basically the last to do it. And then another graphic here shows the airlines that are affected here in the U.S. Southwest, American, United. Only about 70 jets overall. It's a very small percentage of the jets that fly. But the issue here, if you look at the Lion Air flight, apparently is in some sensor on that flight that told the plane that it was aiming up when it wasn't. And so it would correct the jet to start going down, thinking that it was correcting it to, you know, a flat flying. And that's scary. And the president says there's too much technology here, and the technology is what's killed these people.
Well, you know, it's interesting. A plane can literally fly itself. For the vast majority of landings, for instance, they're automated landings, but the pilot's there as a backup to it, right? So the key is whether or not the pilots that are flying the planes have the hours in the air and if they've been trained properly on this newer jet, because the weight distribution of the engines on the wings is different because these planes can go further, so they're configured slightly differently, and also that software, MCAS, that will allow that plane to self-correct. But if there's a sensor issue and that pilot doesn't override that, and the plane's automatic pilot features take over, that seems like what we're seeing here, but they haven't put the two together completely yet.
Mark.
But that's why they believe it.
Hey, Mark, real quick, because we're running out of time, I'm just curious, for the folks at home who may be, you know, they have flights today or tomorrow in the next few days, what is your advice to them? What do they need to know this morning?
Well, number one, they don't have to worry about those planes flying. They're not going to be flying. Number two, if you're on American Airlines, it's 1.2% of the total fleet. So it's not a big issue. I think Southwest is the biggest with about 4% of their total fleet. So you're talking about a tiny number of flights are impacted. And it's typically routes like New York to Miami if you're on American, or flights on Southwest to Houston, for instance, or to the Caribbean. So it really depends. They've pulled back flights from Mexico, for instance. There's 900,000 seats that got pulled out of Mexico. There's plenty of aircraft to substitute in.
Okay. Mark, thanks so much. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
25 minutes after the hour. President Trump could issue the first veto of his presidency as Republicans holdouts say they still won't back him on the border emergency.
But Vice President Mike Pence says it's time for them to listen to the border agents on the front lines. He sat down with our own Pete Hegseth.
Where the people wearing the green uniforms of Customs and Border Protection have told us that they need a barrier to do their job and to do it safely.
And guess what? We woke him up early. Pete is here live with the interview you will not see anywhere else. Good morning. How are you? After President Trump suspends the planes, Southwest, American, and United are among the airlines impacted, disrupting travel for thousands of passengers. The order coming after two jets crashed in less than a year, killing hundreds of people.
Actress Lori Loughlin, Aunt Becky, released on $1 million bond. She's the latest charged in the college admissions bribery scandal, the biggest one in U.S. history. Loughlin and her husband accused of bribing the University of Southern California into admitting their daughters as part of the rowing team they had never rowed.
And today, the British Parliament will decide whether or not to delay Brexit. The decision coming hours after lawmakers voted not to leave the European Union without a deal. Right now, the UK is scheduled to break with the EU on March 29th.
Back here domestically, the fight over President Trump's national emergency declaration coming to a head today. Just hours from now, the Senate will consider blocking it.
And if they do, the president is vowing to veto. Griff Jenkins, live in our nation's capital as the president makes his final pitch. Good morning, Griff.
Good morning, Jillian and Rob. The Republican-led Senate is about to issue a stinging rebuke of the president's border declaration, and he is warning senators on both sides of the aisle that they're making a big mistake voting against him, and he's found his veto pen.
Anybody going against border security, drug trafficking, human trafficking, that's a bad vote. We'll see whether or not I have to do the veto, and it will be, I think, all very successful regardless of how it all works out.
And Vice President Pence touring Customs and Border Protection's training facility in Harpers Ferry, West Virginia yesterday, sending a message to Republican senators. Some, like Rand Paul, are feeling the pressure, telling the Washington Post, if you see anybody that's got blood dripping out of their ear, they may be changing. But as it stands, 5 Republican senators are signaling they will vote with Democrats to block the president. Susan Collins, Lisa Murkowski, Rand Paul, Tom Tillis, and Mike Lee. Now, Lee attempted a last-minute compromise with a proposal allowing the border emergency to go through and adding separate legislation putting limits on future presidents' use of emergency declarations, but it was shot down. Meanwhile, Minority Leader Chuck Schumer is bringing the pressure too.
You ought to stand up to fear. Do the right thing no matter who is in the White House. Our Republican friends know the right thing to do. They should not be afraid to do it.
Now, it appears a done deal. It only takes 4 defections to block, which means they've got 1 to spare. But you never know till it's over in Washington anymore. There are not enough votes to override a veto, by the way. Rob, Julian?
Okay, Griff, thank you.
Let's talk about this for a second. Vice President Mike Pence and Homeland Security Secretary Kirstjen Nielsen pleading with Congress to approve the president's declaration.
Fox and Friends weekend co-host Pete Hegseth went one-on-one with both of them in West Virginia. He joins us now with a look at these exclusive interviews. Hey, Pete.
Yeah, morning, guys. I mean, they both went down to the Advanced Training Center for Customs and Border Protection. Clearly a symbolic move to say this vote is about border security. We don't have the wall. Congress hasn't delivered it. And the frustration with the Senate, with both of them, is that they feel like they're overthinking the vote. This vote is about delivering on what is clearly increasingly a national emergency. The vice president, we sat down in the woods, which is an appropriate place in this training facility, to talk about the border wall. This is what he had to say.
The funding the president requested throughout the government shutdown, the funding that we're appropriating now under the law through the national emergency, is all funding that the Department of Homeland Security told us that they needed to construct a physical barrier, a wall in 10 areas of high-density population where the people wearing the green uniforms of Customs and Border Protection have told us that they need a barrier to do their job and to do it safely.
Yeah, guys, go ahead.
I was going to say, you wonder where this message is getting lost in translation, because these are Border Patrol agents. These are people who see this day in and day out saying we need this.
Yeah, it's because it's become partisan. It's become about the president's wall and his priorities and his prerogatives. We had a chance to follow the vice president yesterday, watch him interact with agents who clearly believe we've got this crisis, not just a national security one, but a humanitarian one. But it's become partisan. And we got a chance to talk to the Homeland Security Secretary Kirstjen Nielsen, and she said this should not be about partisanship.
Congress continues to fail to act. This is not a partisan issue. It's not partisan to want to protect communities. It's not partisan to want to secure our border. It's not partisan to want to secure our homeland. And yet, in this environment, Congress refuses to act.
That's the frustration, is the emergency gets declared when the folks who get the votes won't do something about it. And if you're the commander-in-chief and you're looking at the problem, eventually you step in.
These 5 are starting to bend, or at least that was the reporting from the last 48 hours, that maybe there won't be a veto here.
The vice president was on Capitol Hill. Yeah. He had a clear message, see on Fox and Friends, a clear message for Republican senators. If you don't vote against this, if you don't vote it down, you're voting for open borders. You're voting to not fund the border wall. Good luck going back to your state and explaining that to your constituents.
Have an answer to that in 2020 or 2022, whenever.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay.
Well,
so check it out on Fox and Friends.
Yep, on Fox and Friends. Pete's full interview with the DHS Secretary airs this morning on Fox and Friends at 7:30, and his one-on-one with Vice President Mike Pence airs at 6:30 and 8:20. Pete, thank you very much.
Thank you, guys.
Good to see you. See you later.
35 minutes after the hour, kids in elite schools who didn't deserve to be there, all because their rich and famous parents paid the way.
So here's the question. Should the students be punished? Our parent panel is in studio to weigh in next.
Help he can get cute.
Yeah, I think that was trending.
What he's thinking, I'm sure what he's thinking is feed me and play with me. Those are the two thoughts on that adorable dog's mind.
Yeah, other people comparing that picture to Reagan. So, same
Neat
outfit,
picture.
actually.
Annie Leibovitz as well.
Let's talk about this new study that finds early risers are happier and more successful people.
That's right. Good news for our viewers. This new study found that early risers are more likely to be married with kids, earn more money,
happy, friendly, and confident, have high-quality sleep, and participate in active hobbies. So just a better all-around life if you wake up early and go to bed early. One person on Facebook says, so it's confirmed, the early bird gets the worm. And another Twitter user says, let's agree to disagree. The study found that night owls are more shy and sarcastic.
Yeah, but I was saying, I wonder what time they consider early. Do they consider midnight, getting up late or early? What is that?
Nobody considers that anything but something
Except
that nobody
life
should
for
do.
some of us. Yes.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you so much, Carly.
Thank you.
Well, the time now is almost half past the top of the hour. And did Loretta Lynch lie? Just released Lisa Page testimony raises some brand new questions about not charging Hillary Clinton. Well, our next guest says that that tarmac meeting with Bill Clinton looks way worse now. And most magical place on earth is on track to be the most expensive place on earth. The jaw-dropping price hike, I should say.
Not whole without a soul.
Welcome back. A look at our top headlines for you at this hour, starting with a Fox News alert for you. Several airlines grounding their Boeing 737 MAX fleets after President Trump suspends the planes. Southwest, American, and United are among the airlines impacted, disrupting travel for thousands of passengers. And the order coming after 2 jets crashed in less than a year, killing hundreds of people. And President Trump threatening to veto the resolution to end his national emergency declaration just hours from now. The Senate will vote on the issue. 5 Republicans have said that they will vote with Democrats. And actress Lori Loughlin released on $1 million bond. She is charged in the latest college admissions bribery scandal, the largest one in U.S. history. Loughlin and her husband accused of bribing the University of Southern California into admitting their daughters as part of the rowing team. She is due in court at the end of the month. And now a Fox News alert for you. Breaking overnight, a New York City mob boss gunned down outside his home. Gambino family leader Frankie Cali shot several times in Staten Island. The gunman sped away in a blue pickup truck and is on the run at this hour. Unclear if it was a mafia hit or a rogue gunman. Cali is the highest-ranking mobster killed in New York since 1985. That's when John Gotti ordered the murder of Gambino boss Paul Castellano. Well, R. Kelly returning to court, where a judge refuses to lower his $21,000 a month child support payments. The embattled R&B singer was jailed last week over missed payments. He spent 3 days in jail until someone paid up on his behalf. Now, this case is separate from his criminal case, where he faces 10 counts of aggravated criminal sexual abuse. Well, former Attorney General Loretta Lynch back in the hot seat this morning. Newly released transcripts from former FBI Attorney Lisa Page's congressional hearing may show that Lynch influenced the decision not to charge Hillary Clinton in her email probe. Joining me now to weigh in is attorney and conservative radio talk show host Shandell Summer. Thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate it.
Thank you, Heather. It's good to be here.
So break it down for us. What do you think the implications are here in what's been released so far?
Of course, Loretta Lynn famously had that meeting with former President Bill Clinton shortly before James Comey announced his decision not to prosecute Hillary Clinton for her use of her private email server to send classified material.
Yeah, the tarmac meeting.
At the time, they suggest the tarmac meeting in Phoenix, Arizona, where their planes just happened to be next to each other. And Bill Clinton said that he just hopped off the plane and went over to shake hands with Loretta Lynch. At the time, it seemed a little implausible that you can just get off a plane. I've been on a lot of planes. I'm sure you have. You don't really just get off the plane, walk across the runway to talk to people on the other plane. It's not a social occasion. So that whole explanation didn't really hold water. But now we learn that Lisa Page, who was the attorney for the FBI, who made decisions about charging and what type of charges were going to be brought, also had communications with the Department of Justice, and Loretta Lynn was Attorney General, so she controlled the Department of Justice.
And on that note,
they were the ones.
Right, and on that note, because you're making that point now, let's bring up exactly some of what was released. This is Lisa Page in the interview with the House Judiciary Committee, where she says, or actually Representative Ratcliffe says, when you say advice you got from the department, you're making it sound like it was the department that told you you're not going to charge gross negligence because we're the prosecutors and we're telling you we're telling you we're not going to. And then Page answers, that's correct. Now, we want to fill in the blanks here because this was a previous text message to Peter Strzok, who she was dating at the time, another FBI agent. This was released previously, where it says, I want to believe the path you threw out for consideration in Andy's office, that there's no way he gets elected, but I'm afraid we can't take that risk. It's like an insurance policy in the unlikely event you die before you're 40. So basically, this fills in the blanks of what many people suspected, and that was that this insurance policy had to do with Hillary Clinton, and that now perhaps that tarmac meeting that you were just talking about, Loretta Lynch, wasn't just dealing with grandchildren and golf.
That's correct, and that was their explanation, that it was just an innocuous meeting. But again, that is far-fetched to begin with. And then you have to remember the fact that the Department of Justice has the responsibility for making the charging decision, but Loretta Lynn testified before Congress that she deferred that decision to James Comey. Well, this suggests that the Department of Justice had more to do with the charging decision than they're owning up to. And it's important because what they wanted to charge Hillary Clinton with was gross negligence. And gross negligence under the statute is exactly the explanation that James Comey gave for what her behavior consisted of. He said that her use of the private email server was extreme carelessness. Well, that's exactly what gross negligence is. Now, legal scholars differ on this issue. Some say that the reason that James Comey did not charge or did not make the decision to charge Hillary Clinton, even though it wasn't his decision to make, it was Loretta Lynch's, is because of the fact that he thought that the charge involved intent. But again, legal scholars say that the clear reading of the statute says gross negligence. And that's exactly what he described her conduct to be.
Yeah, interesting that one of the other notes was that the DOJ was not willing to charge this. Only known cases are military cases when accused lost the information. So we'll see what comes of this, if anything at all. Shandell, thank you so much. We appreciate you joining us.
Thank you, Heather.
Have a good day. Well, the time now is about 20 minutes until the top of the hour, and parents now facing criminal charges just to get their kids in elite schools. Well, they may have done it for nothing. Our next guest is a former admissions counselor, and he says that schools already favor rich kids. He breaks down what he calls a messy business. And take a look at this, a plane narrowly missing a truck. Look at that plane go by there. The insane moments caught on dash cam. Welcome back. You're watching Fox and Friends First. The college bribery scam raising new questions about the admissions process at schools across the country. So do kids of America's most elite parents have a leg up just for being rich? Former admissions counselor Nigel Donald joins us now live with an inside look at how and why certain students are selected. Thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate it.
Thank you. Good morning.
So as we begin, let's bring up the list of some of the colleges and universities involved in the admissions scandal. Take a look at this list: Georgetown, Stanford, University of California, Los Angeles, and the list goes on from there. These are some big name schools. So you've been on the inside of this, the process that happens.
Yeah.
Take us through that just a little bit.
Well, you start your year out, and the university always sets what they want. It might be 1,000 students, 1,200 students, and every counselor is given territories, maybe special admissions categories that they're going out there into the world throughout the state. And you're admitting those students. And as the year comes to an end, that number of students that you can enroll, that gets smaller. So the amount of people that you want to get in as opposed to the amount of seats that are available begins to get a little lucrative at that point.
So how do you come up with those different groups?
Those are set by the university.
Okay.
In many typical cases, the Board of Trustees are setting those standards. GPA, SAT scores, any kind of athletes, those are all the considerations that go into effect.
And that's what we saw in terms of some of the issues here with some of these students and this whole scam where they were actually saying that they were playing certain sports when in fact they were not, never had.
Yeah, and you can sometimes see that. I don't believe that was being done at the university I was working at, but you can see in some cases where you do have a coach be approached and say, hey, you know, my son or daughter they've done this before. Let's maybe bring them into that route.
Had you been warned about this type of activity at the school where you were working?
We haven't been warned about it. It was something that was very unlikely to ever happen.
Or did you feel pressure from students, from parents that could perhaps contribute more to fundraising at the school?
In some cases, yes, there was some pressure, and that pressure wasn't coming directly from the parents. The pressure was sometimes coming in lieu of maybe higher senior level officials.
Okay. So why do you think parents, these particular parents, felt that they needed to do this to give their kids a leg up?
In some cases, you have, although these kids are well off in their cases, they slack off academically. And at the end of the day, you have a, potentially wealthy celebrity parent that, wants to maybe keep that prestige, and they don't want to see their son or daughter not be at a level of success, not going to college, not obtaining the higher things in life.
So what can be done in terms of the admission process to keep something like this from happening again?
In that case, I think at most points, state oversight, maybe some oversight as to how many students are being admitted. In some cases, maybe more rash cases, maybe having the state step in to say this is where we want to see how many students are being admitted to universities in our state.
Do you believe that the universities didn't know that this was happening?
I do believe to some degree, some of the universities out there were aware. And I think that this is going to only crescendo into a larger problem across the United States. So I think that there are some officials that might have been involved into it. And I think on the other hand, there are officials that were completely caught off guard.
Yeah. All right. Well, definitely more to come on it. Thank you so much, Nigel. Great to have you with us.
Thank you for having me.
Appreciate it. Well, the time now is about 15 minutes until the top of the hour. And the fallout for flyers after President Trump grounds Boeing 737 MAX jets. We're live in Philadelphia at the Philadelphia airport with the very latest. And take a look at this. These cute little hot dogs get more than they bargained for at the finish line. Several airlines grounding Boeing 737 MAX fleets after President Trump suspends the planes. This comes after 2 jets crash in less than a year, killing hundreds of people. Sabina Kuriakose from our Fox affiliate in Philadelphia joins us now live from the city's airport where flights are being delayed and canceled. Good morning.
Hey, good morning, Heather. Yeah, here we are at a very busy Philly International. We got here around 3 o'clock this morning, and there were already people in line at the Southwest desk trying to rebook their flights. They tell us that they were scrambling. Some of them told us that they didn't find out until much later than they checked that their flights were actually canceled. And they told us about 2-hour-long waits when they tried to call in to try to rebook. Now, a lot of the passengers that we talked to say, hey, safety comes first, but they were hoping that the airlines would have some kind of a contingency plan already in place because it looked like the grounding might be coming for a couple of days now. So they were really surprised that they were going to have to deal with these problems once they got to the airport. Now, we know Southwest has the most MAX 8s out of any airline in the U.S. They have about 34 of them. Philly International is actually a hub for American, but we are told that they do not have any MAX 8s flying in or out, and none of their flights have been affected. United here do have flights, and of course they also have about 14 MAX 9s. So far, it doesn't look like many of their flights have been affected. So we're really talking about Southwest passengers that are dealing with the delays and the cancellations. Some of them flying to Las Vegas or Florida. We had some folks heading to to Phillies training camp, and they were really concerned because they were thinking they're going to have to rebook their hotel rooms and their games. So that's what we're dealing with. Luckily, a lot of the folks that we talked to, they were able to rebook their flights, but some folks, they're still waiting to hear. Worth noting, though, that even if you're not flying on a MAX 8 or a MAX 9, you want to triple check your flight status, because some folks are talking about a cascading effect at this point. For now, back to you.
Of course. You know, and we're told Southwest Airlines all across the country, about 4,100 flights impacted. So be aware. Thank you so much. Speaking of impacting businesses, this Fox Business Alert for you. Federal prosecutors launching a criminal investigation into Facebook over the company's privacy policies. Tracy Carrasco from our sister network, Fox Business, here with more on the social media giant's alleged data deals. Good morning.
Good morning, Heather. Yes, a grand jury in New York has subpoenaed records for about 2 big smartphone makers. This is according to a report in the New York Times for their deals with Facebook, these partnerships that gave the companies access to users' information, their friends list, their contact information, all of that sort of thing. And this often happened without users' consent. So these companies are about 150 companies involved that have these partnerships with Facebook, companies like Apple, Amazon, Microsoft, Sony, so some very big names. Facebook, though, says that they've ended these partnerships within the last 2 years or so. They say they are also cooperating with this investigation, this criminal investigation. But it comes at a time when these social media companies are really under scrutiny because of all of the issues they've had with these data sharing privacy policies.
Yeah, I want to know why they went down for so long, Facebook, Instagram, overnight and yesterday.
Still looking into that, I think.
All right. Well, let's talk about Disney, though. Holiday trips there just got a lot more expensive.
Yes, if you were going to Walt Disney World in Orlando, Florida, ticket prices are going up once again. So to get into one of the parks for one day, it will cost you between $109 and $159 for one person, just depending on how busy the park is. Previously, it was between $109 and $129. One-day park hopper tickets, that's where you can visit more than one park in a day. Those tickets also now going for $169 to $219. Previously, about $139 to $189. The most expensive time of the year is going to be the week of Christmas. All of this comes ahead of Disney opening up the new Star Wars land, which is highly anticipated. That is opening up in August.
Yeah, that would be fun.
Yeah.
But something perhaps a little cheaper. Today is a Pi Day, right?
Yes, today is Pi Day. Pi is the ratio of the circumference of a circle to its diameter. Also frequently remembered as 3.14. Today is March 14th.
Yes.
So that's why we are celebrating. There are lots of deals, not just for pizza pies, but also dessert pies as well. Blaze Pizza, $3.14. You can build your own pizza. Bojangles, 3 sweet potato pies for $3.14. Whole Foods, $3.14 off any large bakery pies. Lots of other places, California Pizza Kitchen, CC's, even 7-Eleven has deals today.
Yeah, $3.14 goes on infinitely, right?
Yes, it does.
But the deals don't.
They do not.
Take advantage
today.
of it. Thank you, Tracy.
Thanks, Heather.
Well, the time now is about 6 minutes until the top of the hour. They say a picture is worth 1,000 words, but this video is priceless. The wipeout caught on camera that will make your morning. On local police to limit their partnership with ICE. The group says more than 9,000 federal immigration agents have access to high-tech license plate readers, which can scan 30 plates per minute. The ACLU says that it gives the feds access to too much sensitive information. And Democratic Socialist Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez teaming up with Reverend Al Sharpton, the New York Congresswoman, will speak at the National Action Network next month. Sharpton calls her, quote, very smart and committed to the progressive agenda. Well, now it's time for the good, the bad, and the ugly, and we begin with the good. These kids, they thought that they were just doing a hot dog race at the ballpark, but there was someone very special waiting at the finish line in Arizona. Watch. Marine Sean Trickett hugging his kids after returning home from Afghanistan. That's awesome. And now the bad. Dash cam capturing a driver's close call with a crashing plane. Watch as it barely misses a tow truck as its wing skims across a highway near an airport. The plane crashing into a ditch on the other side of the road. This was in Canada. The pilot and the passenger, amazingly, not injured. And not anyone injured on the road either. And finally, the ugly college basketball coach gets so excited he falls to the ground. University of Nebraska head coach Tim Miles falling to the ground after winning his game, but he got right back up. They beat Rutgers 68-61. Next up, Maryland. That's good. That's great. He won. That's not ugly. Well, that wraps up this hour of Fox and Friends First. Thank you for joining us. Fox and Friends First.